Something strange happens the first time you grow sunchokes. You plant a few knobby little tubers in spring, maybe in a corner you weren't doing anything useful with anyway. And by August, you're looking up at a wall of plants taller than you are. You harvest in autumn. You get more than you expected. And then, without doing anything, more plants appear the following year. You didn't replant. You didn't do anything. They just came back. And at that point, most gardeners do one of two things. They either get very excited or they get slightly worried. Both reactions make sense, and both reactions are missing the actual point of what just happened. I want to be upfront with you. I came into this topic with a position. My position is that the sunchoke is the most misunderstood plant in home gardening. Not because it's rare or complicated, because almost everything people are told about it frames its strengths as problems. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. I'll be honest about that bias as we go. Helianthus tuberosus, the perennial sunflower, native to the Great Lakes and the eastern woodlands of North America, where it was harvested and cultivated by indigenous peoples for centuries before European contact. In 1605, a French explorer named Samuel de Champlain encountered it along the eastern coast of what would become Massachusetts. He tasted the tubers, compared them favorably to European artichokes, and brought a shipload back to France. What he brought back was not a curiosity, it was a food machine. One plant produces 3 to 6 pounds of tubers per plant. To an acre of sunchokes without irrigation yields around 64,000 calories. An acre of potatoes, even under good conditions with irrigation, yields around 53,000. Let that land for a second. No irrigation, better yield. And it comes back every year without replanting. Lewis and Clark nearly starved crossing the Dakotas in 1805. Sacagawea found caches of sunchoke tubers that had been stored underground by animals, dug them up, roasted them, and fed the entire expedition. The plant had been sitting there all winter in frozen ground, waiting. That's not a fun fact. That's the whole thesis. Now here's the pushback I'd expect from someone watching this. But sunchokes are invasive. I've heard they take over everything. I planted some once, and they were everywhere. I can already see that comment being typed right now, and I thought the same thing before I actually looked into how to manage them. So let me address it properly because it's the thing that keeps most gardeners from ever giving this plant a fair chance. The reason sunchokes spread is simple. Any tuber fragment left in the ground over winter will sprout the following spring. You don't need to replant. The plant does it for you. In open ground, yes. That can mean they migrate. They spread through underground rhizomes and they do not ask permission. But here's what nobody tells you. A raised bed, a large container, or a defined border with a root barrier contains them completely. Harvesting thoroughly in autumn, getting as many tubers out as you can, keeps the following year's growth in check. If you want more plants next year, leave some. If you want fewer, harvest more aggressively. The plant follows your lead once you understand what it's actually responding to. The they take over problem is a management problem. Specifically, it's a first-year problem that solves itself once you understand the mechanism. I'm going to be honest. I went back and checked this 3 times because it seemed too simple. It is that simple. I actually want to slow down here for a second because I moved through that quickly, and it's the part that matters most for anyone who's tried sunchokes once and gave up on them. The plant's behavior, the unstoppable regrowth, the spreading, the refusal to die, is not a bug. It is the feature. A perennial food plant that requires no seed purchase, no tilling, no replanting, and outproduces potatoes in cold climates. That plant exists. It grows in zones 3 through 9. It tolerates drought. It survives -30 degrees Celsius. It will grow in poor soil where other crops give up entirely. The reason most gardeners treat it as a novelty rather than a staple is that we've been trained, entirely reasonably, given how gardening advice is structured, to expect annual crops, buy seed, start indoors, transplant, harvest, buy seed again next year. The sunchoke doesn't fit that rhythm, and so we've categorized it as difficult. It isn't difficult. It's just different. I was at a local nursery a few weeks ago, just picking up some basic herbs for the kitchen window, and I spotted a small, A dusty bag of sunchokes tucked under a shelf near the back. Not in the seed section, not with the potatoes. Just sitting there, half hidden, like it had been forgotten. I stood there in the queue with it in my hand and something just hit me. We talk endlessly about food security. We spend billions on it as a policy problem, and the most self-sustaining food source most of us could grow in a back corner of a garden is treated like it barely deserves shelf space. I put the herbs back. I bought the sunchokes. Nutritionally, what you're getting is significant. 73 calories per 100 grams, 2 grams of protein, 429 milligrams of potassium, more than bananas if you need a reference point, iron, copper, magnesium, B vitamins. But the real story is inulin. We use sunchoke tubers store their energy as inulin rather than starch. 50 to 60% of the tuber by weight. Inulin passes through your stomach completely undigested and arrives in your colon intact, where it feeds beneficial bacteria, specifically bifidobacterium, which multiply and produce short-chain fatty acids. These lower the pH of your colon, block pathogens, and improve your body's ability to absorb calcium and magnesium that would otherwise pass straight through. Studies have linked regular inulin consumption to reduced constipation, improved immune function, and there's emerging research on its role in cancer prevention. Importantly for anyone managing blood sugar, sunchokes don't spike insulin the way potatoes do. The inulin converts to fructose slowly. By the 1980s, diabetics were reporting in writing that eating sunchokes daily had significantly reduced their insulin requirements. That wasn't marketing. That was people noticing what happened when they ate the plant consistently. The plant heals soil in the same way it heals the gut, through root activity. Its deep roots break compacted soil. No tilling required, no erosion. It builds the ground it's planted in over time. Before I go further, let me explain something. It's called survivorship bias. We only hear the stories of the crops that won. We're told the potato is the definitive tuber because it survived the test of time. But the potato didn't win because it was better for you. It won because it was better for warehousing. A potato can sit in a dark room for 6 months and be sold. A sunchoke is alive. It has a thin skin. It wants to be in the ground or in your kitchen. It doesn't sit on a shelf for months without deteriorating. That's not a flaw in the plant. That's a mismatch with the distribution system. And that mismatch is the entire reason it went from feeding European peasants after Champlain arrived to being tucked under a shelf in a dusty bag 4 centuries later. The system we built selects for shelf stability, not nutrition, not yield, not resilience. Shelf stability. Here's where I want to revisit something I said earlier because I framed it slightly wrong. I said the sunchokes management is simple once you understand the mechanism. That's true. But I want to be specific about the one genuine challenge this plant presents. Because pretending it doesn't exist would make everything else I've said less credible. The inulin causes gas, particularly in people whose gut bacteria haven't adapted to processing it regularly. Julia Child, who understood food at a technical level most people never reach, wrote asking whether there was a way to fix this. The answer is yes, partially. Cooking longer converts a portion of the inulin to fructose, which reduces the effect. Starting with small amounts and eating them regularly lets your gut microbiome adapt over 2 to 4 weeks. After that, the effect diminishes significantly for most people. This is not a reason to avoid the plant. It's a reason to introduce it the way you'd introduce any high-fiber vegetable, gradually, with a bit of patience. But if you eat a large serving on your first attempt, roasted for 20 minutes, without any prior exposure, yes, mochai, you will understand immediately why they were nicknamed fartichokes for most of the 20th century. That's the honest version. If you're half listening to this while doing something else, I need you to actually look at the screen for this next part, because this is the piece that makes everything else I've said make sense. In the Netherlands in the winter of 1944, 22,000 people died of starvation. The Dutch government published emergency cookbooks listing wild plants, tulip bulbs, and sunchoke tubers. Families dug frozen ground with their bare hands looking for anything in the soil. In France, during the German occupation, Nazi forces seized 80% of all food production. For most of the occupation, millions of French civilians survived partly on sunchokes, growing wild, impossible to fully seize, impossible to blockade. They fed children when there was nothing else. After liberation, survivors refused to eat them. An entire generation associated the taste with the worst years of their lives. The vegetable disappeared from markets, from recipes, from memory. The plant didn't disappear. It went back underground. And it waited. That's not a metaphor. That's the literal biology of a perennial. The root system persists. The plant returns. You cannot stop it without sustained chemical intervention. Any fragment of tuber left in the soil will produce a new plant the following spring. This is the same property that made it a survival food in frozen-occupied Europe and a famine hedge across North America for centuries before that. And it's the same property that makes it genuinely useful in a home garden right now. Now, here's the thing worth saving this video for. The specific piece you'll want to come back to when you're actually planning your space. Harvest after the first frost. Not before, after. When the temperature drops, the plant converts much of its stored inulin to fructose. The tubers become noticeably sweeter, creamier when cooked, and the gas effect, the thing that put a generation of Europeans off them entirely, reduces significantly on its own before you've even changed how you prepare them. Nature built in a ripening mechanism that most gardening guides don't mention, because most guides are written around a harvest calendar rather than around what the plant is actually doing. Wait for the frost. Harvest after it hits. The plant is better for it, and so are you. That one detail changes the experience of eating them entirely. Weichin, I went back and tested this after I first read about it, and I actually said it out loud to nobody in particular. I remember just going very still in the kitchen. Here's how this actually works in practice. The sunchoke is not a replacement for your annual vegetable garden. It's the infrastructure layer beneath it. Plant it once in a dedicated spot. A back corner, a raised bed, a large container on a patio. After the first year, that space produces food every year indefinitely. You spend no money maintaining it. You spend almost no time on it. It breaks and improves the soil around it. It produces tall yellow flowers all summer. And in autumn, it gives you tubers that store naturally, in the ground, in the cold, until you're ready to harvest them. You don't need a freezer. You don't need a root cellar. The ground is the root cellar. Moni. Plant 3 tubers this autumn. By next spring, you'll understand why every gardener who grows them either has a permanent dedicated patch or is quietly planning to start one. If that's the kind of gardening content that matters to you, practical, specific, focused on what actually works across seasons rather than just what looks good in April, subscribe and hit the bell. This channel is for gardeners who want to understand their growing space at a deeper level, not just follow a planting calendar. If that's you, you're in the right place. The one question this video can't fully answer, and it's a question worth sitting with, is what else in your garden are you restarting from scratch every year that doesn't need to be? Perennial vegetables are an under-discussed category. Asparagus is the one most people know. But the list is longer than most resources suggest. There's a full video in that question, and I'm planning to make it. If you want to be there when it goes up, subscribe now and you won't miss it. Share this one with the gardener in your life who's always buying seed potatoes. The one who's convinced a vegetable garden takes too much time. A sunchoke patch takes about 40 minutes to establish and then essentially manages itself. That's the person who needs to hear this. Have you grown sunchokes? Or have you avoided them because of the spread reputation or the gas? Tell me in the comments, specifically what put you off or what finally convinced you to try them. The actual answers shape what this channel covers next.